So at this point with the texturing, right, we've kind of gone through and shown how to do roughness, right? We've gone through and shown how to do color maps and even how to use images to paint some colors. And this is some kind of neat stuff to kind of get to see the basic principles of as we work this stuff out, right? Um, so I wanted to show you a little bit more of the map types, right? Now, keep in mind if your material preview viewport is not working because your 3D card is garbage, you're probably going to have to rely more on the full render right here, right? Clicking on that one. Usually you're going to want to turn your light on, right, to make sure your light's on and visible. You're also going to want to make sure to go to this one right here, because you'll see sometimes it's kind of a little dark on the bottom there. You can switch to cycles if you want to kind of get a more proper full render. So kind of some options there for how you're going to go about that and use it and play with it. Really depends on kind of how your material preview is going to work for you. I did switch my light type to, let's go to object mode really quick. Just select that. I did switch my light type from, because if you have your light selected in object mode, and you go to the light bulb here, right, there's a green little icon towards the bottom light bulb. I did change to sunlight and turn the strength down, and that kind of gives you kind of a nice, more pronounced lighting setup for this. So those are some of those cool options that are available. If your material preview is just not working, you might kind of, just turn the regular render on and either use cycles or Eevee, whichever one gives you the best kind of overall view of all the lighting scenarios. And make sure your light's on so you can kind of see some stuff going on there, right? I'm going to go back to material preview because that's working for us. All right. So at this point, I want to make a new map type. So of course, 4 for object mode, so I can click on the ship, right? So left click on it so it's selected. We can go down to the little red sphere down here, right? It's kind of towards the bottom of our property editor sheet here. Right, so remember, this is our outliner, and this is kind of our properties menu. And that's generally your tool properties, your tool options, your viewport rendering options, modifiers. A big chunk of your object-based properties and options are right here, right? So we can go to the red sphere, and that brings up the material, right? We already have the material ship on there. We can see there's a color map plugged in. We go further, we see there's a map plugged into the roughness channel to help us control the metal properties, right? And I'll go over that in the review lecture again for you guys later. Now, we can keep scrolling down, and we see there's other options, right? We can see our normal map is plugged in the normal map channel. But you'll also see that there's an area called emission, right? Emission. This is how you do a glow. This is how you create a glow. So just like we plugged in our other textures, I can just go to the emission channel. It's towards the bottom of the material. Remember, your scroll wheel can actually scroll stuff, right? Usually we don't want to use that for zoom because it's a bit jumpy, right? Alt-right mouse button is kind of a smoother zoom. But if you put your cursor over the material viewport, just use your scroll wheel, right? Scroll up, scroll down, and it'll scroll through your material properties. Down towards the bottom is emission. Now, you'll notice there's 2 controls, emission and emission strength. Now, emission is what we want to actually create the map for. That way, emission strength can actually be adjusted on its own to make the glow stronger if we want to. So we're actually going to paint a map for emission. So I click on the yellow dot for emission. That brings up this normal thing, which we've seen before for our color maps. And you notice that, right? Most texturing is actually really just painting a map that has colored pixels in it, right? Now, sometimes those colored pixels are really just gray and black and white, but those are colors, right? So really, all texturing is just painting a map that has pixels in it that have colors, right? And it's what you're actually using the map for, what channel you're controlling that makes it a glow map or a color map or a normal map, right? Although a normal map has a specific set of colors that it uses because it's based on the normal directions, right, of the polygons on a higher resolution mesh. But most other map types, it's really just using either just colors and the normal colors you want for your color map, or we kind of usually go with more of a grayscale, right? Because black can be off, white can be on, middle gray can be like 50%. So you want to see kind of these other map types like roughness map and glow map as kind of an off and on situation, a percentage, right? Black is 0%, white is 100%. Any level of gray in between there could be 10 to 80% to 50%, right? So you're really just using these light and dark pixels to control the amount of an effect, the amount of glow, the amount of shininess, or the roughness of the shininess, right? So we're just going to plug an image texture in just like we did for our color maps. There we go. And now, of course, we can see that it brings up the new and open options. So I can click on new. I'm going to call this Ship Glow. I'll make it 2048. Remember, this depends on how much your computer can handle. This computer can handle a lot more than just 2048, so I could do several 4096s. It's not a problem. But I realize it might be a little different for you. So if you use 1024s, not a big deal. If you want a little more resolution, I would say double the 1024 to 2048. Remember, map resolutions kind of go by like a factor of 2, like a power of 2, right? 1024, you double to 2048. 2048, you double to 4096. So it's pretty easy to figure out the next resolution up or down just by either halving it or doubling it, right? So 2048 by 2048. There we go. And in this case, I do want my color to be black for this material, right? That's because black is going to be off. It's going to be no glow, right? And I want no glow for most of this ship. So in this case, black, the default color, is fine for this. So we'll hit OK. And now we have an actual glow map plugged in, right? Now, at this point, it's always a good idea to go back over to here just to kind of save the texture, but right now it's still set to ship roughness. So even if you're minimizing your UV viewport, maybe have it open just enough to see this. If you're using something like BPainter, which is a great paid add-on, you don't have to worry about this so much, but without it, you know, you have to kind of, there's not much of a layer system. It's a little clunky without BPainter. The actual painting tools are really good, though, or are quite good in Blender. So I usually just go up to this little kind of triangle dot one, right? It kind of is, think of it as like a mountain and a moon or a sun, right? It's kind of like a really abstract, simplified landscape image, letting you know, hey, here's an image. So if you click on this little menu here, right, it's right next to image, you'll see there is Ship Glow. So I can pick Ship Glow, right? So it's right here, that little pull down. I can then go to the image area, and I can just do save, right? And we can just save this as Ship Glow. Now we've got a glow map created, right? And I can go back up to my wrench screwdriver, right? Because remember, there is at the very top of this properties menu a screwdriver wrench icon. They're kind of light gray, very top. Now right now I'm not seeing my paint options because I'm still in object mode and on my select tool. So remember, we have to go to texture paint mode, right? We're in the texture paint workspace, but we need to go and switch our object mode to texture paint mode. And that is 8, right? That was one of our quiz questions we've had a couple times now. It is on our final test as well, right? So texture paint, there we go. But 8's the quick key for that. And now you'll see that we can see our ship normals, our ship color, our ship roughness, our ship glow. So once you've kind of made the map active here and saved it, you should see it here, right? So in this case, like we said, we've already got black as our base emission color. So that means most of this isn't going to glow. So now it's really a question of, well, where do I want glow to be at? So in this case, I'm going to go to my color here. And remember, there's 2 places to get color, right? If you're using the side menus here, just scroll down and there's your color controls. But it's also right here, right? So you do have a lot of these same controls right up here as well. So I'll turn this up a little bit, that grayscale. And I'm going to pick maybe kind of a bright blue. There we go. So kind of pick a bright blue color. There we go. Strength 1 should be good for this one as well. And then what I could do is I could go in here and I could start to paint where I want glow to occur. So I'm just going to kind of paint a little bit of color right in here. And you see it's already looking pretty glow-like, right? I'm just kind of doing a little bit of painting there. There we go. So you can kind of see we're starting to get some glow there. Now here's the thing. if I go to the little render tab right here, right? Remember there's that little kind of microwave briefcase one. I've got bloom on, right? Remember I turned that on earlier. But if you actually go in and open up the options, right? There's that little V next to it that's pointing to the right. Open that up. You can actually turn the intensity of your bloom up and even turn the radius up or down and control some of these other properties. But bloom helps the kind of metals and the glows to pop a little bit more, right? Kind of the pixels can get kind of much more into the HDR, right? High dynamic range kind of effect. Sometimes pixels that are light emitting or highly reflective, right? They kind of like get too bright, right? And that's what bloom is kind of offering us. Now, I'm going to go back to my material for this object though, right? The red sphere down here. I'm going to scroll down. We see that emission has already got a texture plugged in. We've already started painting it. What's really cool though is right below the emission channel is one called emission strength. I didn't want to plug a map into this because I just wanted to be able to control it manually. So I can click in there and I can say 10 to really make that bright, and now you see how it's really looking glowy, right? So sometimes that default strength's a little low. Don't be afraid to kind of really turn that emission strength up to really get that glow to pop, right? So we plug in a map for the emission channel to control painting the color and where the glow is going to happen. We use emission strength to control the intensity. You see how now we have glow on our ship? Isn't that really cool? So once again, this is one of the things that's really awesome about Material Preview and Eevee. Eevee is a pretty amazing real-time renderer, right? This stuff looks pretty close in real time to the final cycles renders. And you can paint all kinds of material channels for this, right? So I can put a bit of glow there and a bit of glow there. Paint a bit of glow there and there, right? And if I wanted to, I could even go in here, right? This is a color map. And I could easily make my brush size a little smaller, right? Radius. I can go to stroke, change from space to line. And I could easily put a little bit, I'm going to make this a little smaller though, that brush. And I could easily put a little bit of glow in these little normal map grooves. So you see how line can be used with any of our tools, right? So remember, all of your painting tools can actually use those different strokes. So I can go in here and I can just paint glow lines where I've got those little sculpt lines, right? And now we've got some really cool glow on this ship, right? And of course, I could put this glow anywhere I wanted to. Maybe I want a little bit down here as well, so I could kind of put a little bit of glow there through the line brush. So you see this is just regular color, right? I've just got this blue color. I've changed my stroke to line method instead of space, but I'm painting that ship glow channel, right? So what's cool about seeing the roughness is that, and the glow is that you see that you can actually go in here and paint not just color maps. You can go in here and paint all kinds of other effects. You could say, hey, I want glow here. I want metallic here. So of course these can just be controlled as straight material properties if you just want something simple, but oftentimes you want something more complicated. So you can actually go in here and paint all these different map types. Isn't that cool? Right, we're painting glow on this ship, just like we painted metal. I'm going to set my stroke back to space. Remember, this hasn't been saved, so I go to image here, because you'll see the image menu here has a little asterisk next to it, so you go to image, save. There is a quickie for it, Alt-S. There we go, it saves it. And of course, remember, if I go to File, External Data, I've got automatically packed preferences on. So when I go to Control-S to do regular Blender save, it'll save the ship, but any textures that I've created for this and saved, it'll also save in the Blender file. So now I have glow, some basic color, and some basic kind of difference in shininess, right? I've got a general low-level shininess, less shininess here, more shininess there. Technically, we might do something a little bit different for the viewport, but This is not meant to be a super exhaustive textured chip. A little bit of highly reflective metallic will work well enough to kind of make it look like a glass, right? Glass is definitely more complicated than that, but obviously, you know, we're not trying to make this the most exhaustive spaceship you could ever make, right? But to show you a lot of good modeling tools and how to do lots of cool texturing things. So that's kind of where we're at, and that's in general what I'm looking for from your spaceships, right? It'd be great to see, of course, sculpting normal map. I want to see that. I want to see some basic coloring, a little bit of color, different colors in different parts of the model. I'd love to see some metal map, right, roughness and glow as well. Now, remember the pipes are something you didn't actually have to do for your ship. So what I briefly just want to show you is how you can do 2D texturing for stuff if you want to. So I'm going to go to 4 for object mode, and I'm going to turn pipes back on, turn ship off. There we go. Select it. If we go to our blue or red sphere down here, we'll see that this has its own material pipes because we've shown that off in earlier projects. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to base color, yellow dot, right? Image texture. So that way we can create an image texture. Now, usually it turns black initially because it hasn't really plugged in a map yet, right? You've kind of created the node, but there's no texture plugged into that node. So now, of course, this is just like color mapping, right? It actually is, right? Hit new. Call this pipes color. But this is optional. I felt it'd be cool to show you this, right? I'll maybe pick a gray color, so I'll click on this color. Drag the little sidebar slider up here so it becomes gray. Hit OK, and now we have an actual texture on the pipes. Now, in this case, remember, we want to go over to here. And in this case, remember, if you actually put your cursor over this little divider here, right, and you see these kind of 2 arrows going to left and right, if you left-click drag that, you can make this section bigger, because what I want to do is show you that you can actually paint in this 2D view, right? 3D projection painting most of the time is awesome. It's the way you want to do a lot of your texturing. Sometimes, though, certain effects are better done with a procedural texture or a 2D texture painting. And I'm going to show you guys how to do 2D texture painting here as an option, right? This is not required. Remember, I just required the main ship built and all those things that go with it. The pipes and thrusters were kind of, I just want to make sure you guys saw how to do those because they're neat things, right? They're cool things to know how to do. So remember, you just want to go to like that little triangle dot one, click on that. I'm going to go to pipes color to make sure that's the active one. Then, of course, I can go to image, save, and it'll usually call itself pipes color if you've kind of already created a name in the other material stuff. And now we've got that, right? Now we've got that. Now, remember, if we want to paint with a texture, we have to go to image, right? That little kind of a red checkerboard at the bottom here. And I can go new, brings this up. I can go open, right? And this is how you do it for your other stuff as well. I'm going to go to stencils. I'm going to see if I got a stencil here. This is where you just go to browse on wherever you've saved some textures that you've downloaded. And I'll go to the little, right, there's the 4-box one right here. It's kind of your image preview. And I feel like I should have something that'll work well for this. Yeah, that'll work well enough. If you want to do something like a highly repetitive geometric texture, like kind of these diamond shapes, or kind of this piping here, right, this kind of lines, right, you really need to do this 2D texture painting-wise, right? 3D projection's not going to work well for this. So I'm going to select that one, hit Open Image, and of course, you know, I can go to 8 for texture paint mode, right? And remember, you can actually go in here and, you know, go to texture here, right? And you see the texture is already on. But in case it isn't, you just got a texture window here. You'll see that there should be a little kind of window here. It looks like a square. Click on it. And that's where any textures that you've loaded in this way will show up, right? And you can select them. If you want to turn them off, you hit the X, right? So normally if they're off, you'll see this. But if I go to the checkerboard here, I can click, select it. Now remember, for this mapping type, I want to use not view plane here. So I'm going to click on view plane. I'm going to go down to stencil, right? Stencil. Once I do that, we now see there's an image here. Now remember, the default quick keys in Blender are right mouse button to move it, shift right mouse button to scale it, and control right mouse button to rotate it. Now, what if I try to paint this kind of effect on these in 3D? Right, control right mouse button. You notice how it's not really going to work that well? So actually trying to paint a highly repetitive linear pattern like this through projection painting on a 3D model that wraps around in lots of different ways, not very effective, right? So as much as 3D projection painting is awesome and a great way to do a lot of your texturing, sometimes you might want to do 2D painting. I'm also going to switch my color back to gray or white because the closer your image, the color is to white, the more it'll paint your image exactly as it is. If there's a color in here, it will tint that image. But one of the things you'll notice is that I don't have to paint right on the 3D model all the time, right? It's a pretty common feature. Substance Painter allows you to do this. Blender does. So I'm going to move my window over here a bit more. And you'll notice that my stencil shows up here. And I could do right mouse button to move it, control right mouse button to kind of rotate. All right. And what I could do is I could come in here and I could just paint this two-dimensionally. There we go. Kind of just get that a little bit more. There we go. And you see I'm painting it kind of based on where the UVs are at. You do want to make sure that this is set to paint, right? You'll see it won't paint if it's just in view mode, so you do want to make sure to go to this one right here to set it to paint. And of course, I could move this down here, probably line that up pretty well just so it'll kind of line up those lines. But you see as I'm painting this, you'll notice how it's lining up on there quite well, right? So sometimes 2D painting is actually easier and a better way to do certain kinds of texturing effects. Now, like I said, do you have to do this? No. I mean, some of you didn't make your pipes, and that's fine. But you now can see that you can actually use all of your texturing tools in the 2D paint view, like line, all your different strokes, stencils you can use in here. You can paint them in 2D. And you see how that kind of allows this to kind of follow the pipe or the hose pretty well, right? So that's one of the really, really cool things about stencils, right? You can bring images in. But honestly, this is also why I showed you how to straighten, right? Remember how we straighten those UVs? That way, when we texture something like this, it'll work well, and it'll line up well, right? Like I said, this stuff is purely optional, though, right? You're not required to make the pipes. If you don't have the pipes modeled, you don't have to texture them. You don't get marked down for having that stuff. You could just go with a simple material color for the pipes and thrusters, right? That's fine, too, if you did model those. But now you know that you could do 2D painting with all of your tools. And that in an instance like this, for like a pipe or a hose, you might actually find that 2D painting is the better option. All right, so that's kind of just a neat little thing I want to show to you guys. I do want to show you one more little quick thing, but once again, optional. But I'm going to go to texture here, right, the texture menu, hit X to turn this off. Also switch my view mapping back to view plane, right? And there we go. Everything's kind of back to normal. But if I was to go to, say, and I'll go to image here, save, right? There we go. Save my Blender scene. If I go to the shading workspace, you will see that there's basically only a color map plugged into the pipes here. One of the things you can also do is left-click drag on that color dot again, and you can plug this into normal. And you can actually use the same map to control multiple channels. Now in this case, I want a proper bump node intervening here. So I can go to Add, Vector, like where we went to normal map, but there's also one called Bump. And then I could just kind of put this over that line, plug it in, and then we can start to get kind of a bump mapping effect. Now, sometimes that not having non-color on can do weird stuff, so you do have to kind of be somewhat careful with this. Also, we want to actually change that color node that was plugged into normal. We want to kind of unclick that and plug it into height. And you see how it actually starts to bump map this? It starts to create actual bumpiness. And of course, this has its own strength that we could turn up to make it more or less bumpy. Once again, optional, but you'll notice that you have your own bump node, right? In the vector menu, like normal map, there's one called bump. And you can just take an existing grayscale or color map that wasn't meant to be a normal map, and by plugging it into the normal channel and that original color map into two channels, the base color and this, you can always create a new image, though, and load this one in, though, so it uses the same image but different controls. You can always do that if you want to. You do get this kind of little bit of noise effect going on here, and that's because the source image I painted with wasn't the highest quality. So the bump map might not look really perfect clean from super close either. And if you want to plug both bump maps and normal maps in, you can actually take your normal map node and plug it into the normal channel. So as long as your bump map is plugged into the height channel and your normal map is plugged in the normal channel, both will work and kind of on the same model. It's kind of a neat feature. So I just want to show you a little bit about how you can actually take the same image, plug it into multiple channels. And that there's things like the bump node intervening. But usually you want to switch it to height instead of normal. And let me turn the ships back on. There we go. And then we just got kind of a little more going on there on the ship. All right, that'll be a great place to stop this, I think.